Aloha and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This 6-question podcast brings together high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that'll help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
Sixers, what an absolute treat today. The man I'm about to introduce goes by many titles, and I could list them all, but that would take the whole episode, which is phenomenal. But what I really hold near and dear to my heart and why I feel he's just such an incredible human, leader, man, you name it, is because he's so intentional. Nate Boyer, welcome to the Got Your Six podcast. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
I appreciate that, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, what you're doing with Merging Vets and Players, co-founded by you and Jay Glazer, whose book Unbreakable is absolutely blowing up the book charts right now, and rightfully so. Unbreakable, how I turned my depression and anxiety into motivation, and you can too. It just shows the company that you keep. And I just want to give a quick background, 30 seconds. Nate, please time me so I don't go too long. Nate is a former Green Beret, got out of the Army after 6 years and multiple tours, then walked on, never playing a down at Texas as a Longhorn, long snapper, went undrafted through Pete Carroll, got picked up by the Seattle Seahawks, and has just gone on to do absolutely unbelievable things. I mean, it's no reason you live by the mantra, anything is possible.
Yeah, you got it, brother. That's it. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of people that motivated me over the years. And, of course, right when we began, we got a nice little fire truck going by. It's not the cops after me or anything like that. It's been awesome. I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area and moved to Southern California after high school and wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do with my life. You know, I worked on a fishing boat for a bit, number of odd jobs, and then 9/11 happened, and it kind of shifted my path as it shifted a lot of other people's paths. And I wound up finding myself doing some relief work over in the Darfur for a couple of months, and it just completely changed my perspective of things, sort of gained my patriotism over there and developed this appreciation for what we have and what so many others were willing to die for, over the generations here. And not that this place is perfect, this country, there's a lot we could do better for sure. But at its core, at the heart of it, I think is a lot of people, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people that believe in the American dream and believe that anything is possible. And I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to fight alongside people like that. I wanted to fight for those who can't fight for themselves in places like the Darfur. And it just so happened around that time, we were going to Afghanistan, we were going to Iraq, and I joined the Army and became a Green Beret. I was fortunate to have this contract available to come in off the streets and go to basic training airborne school. And if you passed all the selection tests and certain requirements, you go on to be able to do your training and become a Green Beret eventually. And so it was just one of those things. It wasn't something I really knew I was going to do as a kid. There was interest there in high school a bit, but nothing really serious. And then once that happened, and towards the end of my time in the military, it was like I was fortunate to have this dream of playing football to kind of transition to, at least the attempt. That was the most exciting part, to go out there and just pursue that. And so I made the team at Texas. Eventually, as you mentioned, started long snapping and found a way on the field, and that even got me an opportunity with the Seahawks. And then when that ended, and I lost that uniform, I lost the camouflage, and now I lost the jersey. That's when Jay and I came together and developed what is now Merging Vets and Players, where we're bringing together combat vets, former professional athletes, and helping them find purpose and identity in that locker room and team again when the uniform comes off. Once again, the fire trucks are back. But I don't think it's the cops coming after me, I swear. But anyway, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at today. And now we just opened our 8th chapter. We're all over the country, and we're going to keep growing. And it's a really exciting time for all of us. We have, believe it or not, we have 25 people on the staff now, which, like, I was just thinking about that today. It's wild to imagine. Just 6 years ago, really, we had no people on the staff. You know what I mean? We were just we were kind of figuring out who we are and what we are, and now we're where we are today. So it's an honor. I'm blessed to be a part of this team. I'm really fortunate to, more than anything, just be a member of MVP, because it's helped me a lot. Every week I come in here, we have MVP tonight in Los Angeles, and I can't wait to get in there and sweat a little bit with the guys and girls, and then we'll go to the wrestling mat afterwards, and we'll just we'll talk through it. We'll talk about what's going on in our lives today. We'll talk about transition. We'll talk about things that we're struggling with, and we encourage that vulnerability. And then other people in that circle will help you through it, because it's all about just communicating that. And Jay alluded to that in his book, talks about some of that stuff. We're very fortunate now to have the opportunity to get back together as well in the gyms and be in person and face to face, and and be able to just communicate this stuff. That mutual respect between the two groups has always been there, and we kind of look up to each other as heroes, vets and athletes. Yeah, they're all my heroes. Everybody who's part of MVP has become my hero as well. So it's pretty cool.
I absolutely love how you continue to redefine your purpose and helping other people redefine purpose, regardless of what uniform they take off. But before we go into that, being in all the different rooms and the situations that you've been in, where have you constantly or looked to implement at least one thing from your time in the military?
Man, I mean, I think the number one thing that I didn't realize I was learning it at the time, but the number one thing I've I guess held on to after that time in service, maybe it's two things that are tied for the lead here, but it's empathy, and trying to understand and put yourself in somebody else's shoes and get that your way is not the only way, and it's maybe not the best way either. And just because you feel something very strongly, and you're very passionate about it, it doesn't necessarily mean that what you believe is right and what somebody else believes, if it's different, is wrong. It's just not true. And the other one is listening, and trying to listen at a high level. And sometimes, and I still fail at it, man. We all do. Like, we get comfortable in our situation or our position, or we think we got this, and we kind of think we can go it alone and do it by ourselves, do it on our own. And that, for me, when I do that, is when I fail to listen like I need to, with the intention of truly hearing somebody, where they're coming from, also what they're trying to maybe teach me, or what they have to share, or an issue that they have going on that they're looking for an answer with. But really, really listening. When you listen, you got to listen with your eyes too. And, that ability, and I guess now it's a luxury to be able to sit across from somebody. I mean, we can do it like we're doing right now. Of course, we're on Zoom, and, we're able to see each other, but being in a room with somebody and kind of feeling that energy and really, really paying attention to body language and those type of clues with somebody is invaluable, because sometimes we say things that we don't really mean. You ask somebody, how you doing? They might say, okay, I'm doing okay, or I'm doing good. And they might not actually be doing good. And you gotta listen in a more intentional way. And that takes really paying attention. That's true listening is. So I think the military, they taught me that in some ways without knowing it, because of so much of the communication, not only with the people that are wearing the same flag on the shoulder that you are, but when we're working with Afghans and Iraqis, and there's language barriers and cultural barriers. And, if you're not willing to really listen to them as human beings, you're not only missing out, but there's going to be a lot of misunderstandings, and you're not going to get a lot done.
Do you think it's during those multinational operations that really emphasize both empathy and listening on a high level that kind of cemented it for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think if it's foreign internal defense is what we're doing in the Special Forces, mostly every mission is by, with, and through indigenous people of that place that you're in, and you got to be respectful, even if you disagree with how they maybe handle certain situations, family customs. Like there's a lot of those things that are hard to let go of and hard to understand and hard to be accepting of. But you got to do your best to do that. Unless, of course, it's a situation where somebody's intentionally harming another person, you know what I mean? Or treating somebody
right, absolutely.
in an unjust way. Of course, there's exceptions to that in every culture where that's not okay. But, for the most part, if it's not doing something like that, just because they pray a different way, they eat a different way, their gestures, what's considered polite here maybe isn't polite somewhere else, right. And vice versa. Like you gotta let that stuff go and not take everything so personal. And I'm the number one violator of taking things personal, but at least I'm becoming more and more aware of it, And a lot of that was through time in the military, or being around people in the veteran community after I transitioned out.
Yeah, and you continue to serve in different ways, right? Whether you were in the NFL, I know you were a fantastic steward for the military, doing what you were doing. But being in those situations where you have those challenges, you're constantly learning, and I appreciate how you continue to talk about, like, I'm working at it all the time, right? That shows the self-awareness that you need to continue to grow. Where are you challenging yourself right now, Nate? Whether it's, especially like with an MVP, as you continue to expand, where do you feel like that challenge is really kind of getting at you when it comes to like redefining purpose for not only yourself, but others?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. That's a tough question. Everybody's different. For me, there's certain creative endeavors and even like physically competitive endeavors, which become mentally competitive, that I like to continue to be involved with, like making a movie, filmmaking, just film in general has been a big inspiration to me throughout my life, starting from when I was much younger and even through my late teens and early 20s, where I was really developing as an adult, in a lot of ways. And a lot of the content that I saw shaped that, and stories that I heard and watched. And I wanted to be a part of telling those stories. There's a lot of very worthy stories that have not been told yet, and hopefully will one day. And there's also a lot of stories that, in my opinion, maybe get told in I don't want to say the wrong way, but in a way that I'm not necessarily driving with, And
Yep.
And there's certain things because of my experiences that I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of, and I'd like to help tell stories in those veins. And some of those have to do with the veteran experience. Some of them don't. But I was lucky to have this incredible team at MVP, and then people I met outside of MVP that are out here in the film industry as well, that love what we were doing as an organization and wanted to help tell the story, or tell a story of, a veteran and an athlete connecting and maybe having a lot that are not similar about them, a lot of stuff that's different on paper, but at the end of the day, like they're going through the same struggles and they're going through the same reflections and the same growth at a very young age in terms of like that feeling that you've peaked and you'll never be great again. And that's really what that film was all about, and that story. And then beyond that, I love to push myself in different ways in competitive endeavors. And I just started getting more into distance running and trail running. And, I just ran my second marathon about a month ago. And then 3 weeks after that, I ran a 50K in Griffith Park here in Los Angeles, which is about 31
I was going to say, not
miles.
just any 50K. That is some elevation.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like 6,240 feet elevation gained. Also dropped. I mean, you come downhill as well.
Sure.
But
yeah,
throughout the day, you're going up and down these hills, and it was hard. It was really hard, but it was exciting, and I love the feeling that the attempt. Like even if I didn't finish it, of course you're going to be disappointed, but like what's more exciting to me is that I'm willing to go try and just kind of go after it. We'll see where that leads. I am going to sign up here for the Leadville 100, which is in Colorado, and it's 100 miles, and it's insane.
Let's go.
And it's very high. I think the whole thing's at elevation. So
why not?
Why not? Why not? While I'm still young, I guess. So that's something I'm looking forward to diving into later this year. And then just with MVP, man, watching this baby still grow. We're hoping to open another chapter later this year, maybe even two within the next year, and just keep building on what we have. And the sky's the limit with that. It's definitely tough. One of the toughest parts about what we do is having to tell people not right now, or we're not ready for that yet. And sometimes straight up no, because it's not something we agree with, because there's a lot of people from the veteran community, from the athlete community, that really want us to be around where they're at, and want to be a part of it and have ideas on how they could grow and or we could grow, I should say. They have ideas on how they think we could grow as an organization, and just that's the toughest part of it, just having to like sift through that and sometimes say no or not yet, and know that there's people out there that need you. It's a good problem to have, I guess, in a lot of ways, because you're being of service and you are of value, but it's also hard. It's just hard. I'm not good at that. I'm not a good no person, man. I want to tell people yes and yes and, you know what I mean? And let's do it. But the reality is it's not that simple, and we can't afford to fail. We can't afford for any of the places we go to not work out and to not be able to be there for the tribe, and have our cups filled as well. When you're working at a job like this, with those 25 people on staff, all of them, regardless of their role, they all play a part in peer-to-peer coaching and counseling and mentorship and brotherhood and sometimes having to have some really hard conversations with people and we get a lot laid on us too, and sometimes some pretty negative stuff when someone's in a bad place, and you got to take it and roll with it and not take it, do your best to not take it personal and keep, without absorbing those things as negatives, just sort of, I don't want to say deflecting, because that sounds like you're ignoring, but being able to just let that stuff slide off your back and not bother you, and understand that typically moments like that with anybody, it's something about them that they've got going on. I know when I get upset, when I lash out on somebody, maybe it usually has very little to do with what they said or did. It's something I got going on. You know what I mean? And it's just manifesting itself in that anger or frustration. And that's why I need MVP, and that's why I need those physical challenges and outlets, because they help me, and the creative outlets as well, because they help me manage that stuff, and they help me, not get so focused on them and obsess over them, because it's easy to do. And
by living a life full of it, like intentionally, like you said, it allows you to continue to believe in those attempts, whether you fail or succeed. And it comes back to, I love how you tied it into, right? Being empathetic and listening at a high level to other people. But along the way, there are failures. Could you pick out one failure that you've had in your life that has ultimately set up just a phenomenal success, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of them. One that's very clear in public is I got cut from the Seahawks, and I didn't make the final roster. Like, people are like, wow, you played in the NFL. And it's like, I mean, kind of, yeah. I played in a preseason game. I was in training camp. I was signed as a free agent, yes. But a lot of athletes, I think, more so people that didn't have the experience I had prior, where it was like, oh, I was in the military, and I was in special forces, and I went to college at an older age, and so a lot of people see me just getting to where I got in Seattle as like, wow, what a victory, and it was, but ultimately, I failed. That's not what I set out to do. I set out to play in the NFL, and I didn't do that, So that's one that really sticks out to me. But I think a lot of that was, I was so grateful, and I am so grateful to have the perspective because of the people that were celebrating where I got, and just that I was trying, and that how that was more important to them too. That really helped me understand, like, hey, it's okay. Like, it ends for everybody at some point, whether you're Tom Brady winning 7, maybe more than that, Super Bowls and playing until you're in your mid 40s, or, you play in one preseason game and you get cut on the second round of cuts, and that's it. And, team calls you again. That's a failure. It is. But if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have got a call the next day from a guy named Chris Long, Howie Long's son, who has an organization called Water Boys, which is pretty incredible. And he's him and other NFL players and now some of the veteran community helping bring clean water to East Africa. And he was like, "Hey man," he called me like literally the next day after I got cut. It's like nobody's going to call a guy on the day after he got cut. They know he's in a dark place probably. He's in the hole. And Chris called me. He was just like, "Hey man, so blown away by what you were able to accomplish. I'm really proud of you. And I have this organization. Is there something you want to do involving that?" Because I hadn't really done much work in the nonprofit world at all in my life. A little bit of volunteering here and there, or working in a student organization on campus or something in college. But we started talking about like this idea of bringing vets and athletes to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro together and raise money for clean water. And it was such an awesome idea. Ended up doing it a little later that year, going up with another veteran, and we climbed Kilimanjaro and raised enough money for 2 wells to be dug, actually. And it was so special. And right around that time was when I started having those conversations with Jay, and it was like, this is my new purpose. This is my new mission. It's like, let's figure out how we can bring these groups together to make the world a better place. And so, I don't know. I mean, what if I played a couple of years in the league, and what if I ended up somewhere else and I didn't come back to Los Angeles, and Jay and I never had that conversation. Chris never made that call. Like, who knows? I'm sure we'd figure something out. But, it was because of that failure that another door opened, and I was willing to answer the call and step through the door and not be negatively affected by that ultimate loss or whatever. You know what I mean? You just bounce up. You bounce back off of it, and that's happened a lot of times in my life where I didn't win a lot of games growing up in sports I was playing. I was on bad teams all the time, but you learn so much more from losing, man. It's a very valuable thing. I'm not saying you should ever go out there and try to lose anything, but if you're competing at a high level, at the highest level you're capable of, you're gonna lose. You're gonna get beat, and that's a good thing that you're willing to put yourself out there like that.
Absolutely, instant feedback. Nate, it's been an absolute honor. Before I go, Nate Boyer, we ask everybody this question on the Got Your Six podcast: how are you better today than yesterday?
Wow, that's a really good question. How am I better today than yesterday? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I figured it was because you got that meeting tonight. We're going over to see
that's a good
chapter
point.
over at
MVP. We got MVP tonight. That's one thing. But, I think I should be able to answer that every day, because hopefully, as you go through life, no matter who you are, you're going to lose every day at something, whether it's an argument, whether it's a parking spot, little things like that, or something big. Like, it's just going to happen. And if you're able to learn from that, able to grow from that, even if it's just like a fraction of a percent every day, you're going to get better. You're going to get stronger, even as you get older. And so, I don't know how I'm that much any better than I was yesterday. I don't know how to really explain that. But I do know that I am, because of the team I got around me. Even those days that are going to be tough, where you're going to, potentially lose somebody close to you in your life. And that happens a lot. And it happens a lot, even more in a lot of the work that we're doing. But remembering those people in a positive way and carrying on their legacy and making sure that, you're doing the work that they were doing when they were here, and living out their American dreams and all that stuff as well. So, yeah, it's absolutely possible, and it's necessary. Our country and our world needs us to be better every day.
I could say, Nate, we're better today, myself and all the Sixers listening, because we got to hear your story. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we let you go, where can people go to connect with you and learn more about MVP?
Yeah, to learn more about MVP, go to vetsandplayers.org. That's VETSANDPLAYERS.org. Or you can just Google Merging Vets and Players or MVP, Jay Glazer, Nate Boyer. You'll find it. It's out there. And then on social media, I'm at Nate Boyer 37.
On Instagram and everywhere else. Nate, I'll make sure I link everything in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Tony. Your
methods,
your ideas, and of course, thanks for having our six.
Of course, brother. Appreciate you, man.
I don't know what you've been told, Sixers, but the lawyers would like us to remind you that the views, opinions, and comments expressed on the Got Your Six podcast are solely those of the hosts or guests, to include current and previous Department of Defense employees, and should in no way be considered the opinions of or endorsements on behalf of the Department of Defense or any of its components, divisions, contractors, or other current and previous staff members.